Thank you for joining us on the Person to Person Network. Welcome to Profiles in STEM. Our career series will feature an amazing STEM professional who is shaping lives and building the future. I'm your host, Katie Culbert, and if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to our network. Joining me today, we have a very special woman in STEM, Dr. Kass Urban-Mead. Dr. Urban-Mead is a Pollinator Conservation Specialist for the Mid-Atlantic Northeast region of the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. She assists with the planning, designing, installation, and habitat management for pollinators and other beneficial insects. Dr. Urban-Mead also works with research partners to develop technical guidelines and provide training on pollinator conservation practices. She is also a partner biologist for the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Services, NRCS. Dr. Urban-Mead, welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me, Katie. Great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, Dr. Urban-Mead, let's go back in time. Did you always know you wanted to be a scientist? Can you tell us about a specific moment that inspired you to first pursue a career in STEM?
Tricky question. No, absolutely not. I've always loved being outside. I've always loved observing things closely. I've always really loved plants and animals, but it never occurred to me that I would do it as my primary job, probably until I was in college. But I always really cared about food systems and sustainability. And I grew up raising dairy goats. And so I was always kind of milking and out in the meadow and thinking about pasture and where our food came from, and how to do it at different scales that could feed everybody while taking care of the world that we live in and are so closely a part of. So yeah, but I thought I was going to be a French major when I went to college. I took a bunch of art classes. And then eventually I took an entomology class and was like, oh my goodness, I can make insect collections. And I just thought that the biology was like watching science fiction movies every day in class. That's the most incredible thing. And so I've been hooked ever since. But I was definitely not like, I'm going to be a scientist since I was a little kid.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I know a lot of viewers probably feel the same exact way, like they're not really sure what they want to do for their future. So I'm so glad in college you decided to take an entomology class and was able to find your passion. So Dr. Urban-Mead, as you know, we met from my pollinator garden grant from Xerces, and I was wondering if you could describe your work in a pollinator conservation in more detail for our audience.
Sure. Yeah, my work as a biologist with Xerces and NRCS, like you described, has a lot of different parts, which is part of why I love this job. Before this, I was finishing my PhD, and that was a lot of other really exciting variation day to day. Some parts of the year were research in the field, some parts of the year were analyzing data, other parts of the year were reading literature and writing that up, or writing grant proposals to do new projects. Whereas now with Xerces, one of the projects that we did was the Habitat Kit program, which Katie led a fantastic garden from, where we work with a fantastic local nursery, and we get a grant to fund the purchase of all those plants. And then we find partners of community members, farmers, urban gardens, all sorts of folks who are able to take care of those plants. And so they join us as project partners, where we're able to coordinate all those logistics, and then folks install this incredible and important habitat. So that's one program that we run during the year. I also do a lot of outreach and extension and educational events, which means I get to talk to people all over the area and learn about ways that they are excited about or already doing really important conservation work, or other work that pollinators can be added on to, like stormwater management or tree work in rural or urban areas. Pollinators can be connected to pretty much any other project, which is exciting because they are everywhere and have such diverse lives. Yeah, so it's really varied day to day, and we have lots of different angles of approach. But pollinators are so important for our lives and our food, so it's always interesting.
Yes, thank you for sharing all of that with us. All of your work sounds so important to bees, butterflies, and all the pollinators that you guys help out with. So after obtaining your undergrad and master's at Yale, and then your PhD from Cornell, you decided to go outside of academia. Can you describe the reason that made you make this decision and how you became involved with Xerces?
Um, yeah, I've always admired Xerces' work. I've known about it since I was an undergrad. So I really love teaching. I really love doing research. And so I was open to lots of different careers as I was doing my graduate work. But I really love doing applied work. My PhD work would try to be really relevant to the growers and land managers who I was working with, even while getting to think about some pretty obscure details of bee biology. So it's a really fun match. And when I saw this position open up, it was in a region in the world that I wanted to live in, and that's really important to me. I thought that it was a place where I would be able to join a team that I really, really respected and get to think about the science that I had already spent so much time thinking about. I wouldn't have to leave that behind, but would get to connect those dots every day to help put that work into action. And so that was just a really exciting idea. So I couldn't resist. And when I got the job, I was so grateful, and it's been wonderful.
I appreciate your insight into that decision, and I'm so glad like you mentioned all the factors that you were considering when you wanted to take the job opportunity. And I think it's just so cool, it just like opened up and it had everything that you wanted to. It's like it was meant to be. So can you just give us some understanding as to what a typical day is like, whether you are in the office or out in the field?
Yeah, I have a pretty good mix. I'm probably out in the field 2 to 3 days a week and in the office 2 to 3 days a week, which is fantastic. It's a great mix for me because I love reading scientific papers. I love talking to people, sometimes on Zoom, and I really think it's important to take time to think carefully and look at the evidence and really make measured decisions about how it works. But I also kind of got into this line of work because I actually just want to be outside all the time. And so it was a really nice combination right now. And it changes over the course of the year, right? There's times when people all really want to field visit all at once to talk about a new conservation project, and other times of year when the cycle is different in the grants or in the season. And so it has a good variability.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing all of that with us. It sounds like your job's really exciting, and I like how you have a nice balance between office hours and being outside and doing what you like out there. So your work is very important. So can you also talk to us about some of the outreach efforts at Xerces?
Um, Yeah, so I guess to introduce Xerces a little bit more formally, we're an invertebrate conservation organization that was founded in 1971. The name Xerces, Xerces, is named after the Xerces blue butterfly, which is a butterfly that went extinct. That was due to habitat loss and habitat destruction in the Bay Area in California. And the folks who founded Xerces back in the 70s said, well, we want to be making sure that we don't let this happen again. So now there's almost 70 different employees across the US, and we all have different portions of that role. So there are folks who lead community science efforts doing bumblebee monitoring in the mountains in the West. There are people who work really carefully with municipalities in order to evaluate their pesticide and planting and habitat management practices to make sure that they can be bee cities. They get a certification if they do enough to make sure that there's a holistic plan in place. There's people like me who part of my job are the things I described for that, and part is supporting the NRCS, the government branch out of the USDA, with on-farm technical services and other working lands. When they're doing these funded conservation projects from the government, we provide technical support for that. So really detailed guides on when to do your site prep, how to design your seed mixes, how to choose your plants, how to maintain your habitat over time. So there's a lot of work on that front. And just really quickly, we have folks working on supply chain issues, working with huge companies to talk about how they can change everything down the line of their whole supply chain to be more bee friendly. And we have folks who work on endangered species, who work on policy. So I think, at the Xerces level, there's a pesticide team really working on regulation as well as guidance for knowing which pesticides are most or, lower risk and how to make those choices. Yeah, so it covers a lot of ground. It's a really exciting team to be a part of.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that about Xerces. You guys are doing such important and cool work over there, and I know that myself and probably almost everyone in the world appreciates all the work that you guys are doing to help the pollinators. So, Dr. Urban-Mead, what advice can you give to someone who's interested in becoming a biologist?
Ooh, I think just get involved in as many different projects as you can. I didn't even know how many wild bees that there were in the world when I started. So the things that you end up getting interested in later on, if you do continue to be a biologist, maybe organisms or cycles or patterns that you don't even know exist. And that's common for a lot of people that I hear talk about their journey, is why would they ever think about studying the symbiotic microbiome of an obscure solitary bee who lives on the side of a shore, right? People I know who study things like this, or the coevolution of a parasitoid and a host plant, or the declining, there's just so many options for things that are really hard to access unless you end up just volunteering or hopefully getting paid, because we should all be getting paid for our work because it's important. The more different opportunities you see, you also learn about different work cultures, you learn about different systems, you learn about different methods. And one of the coolest things, especially that happened during my graduate work, was I got to see how many people pulled together different interests and different portions of their lives and different skill sets from things that they had learned over many, many years, that together allowed them to explore something new and exciting. So I think don't decide too early what you think you're going to do. Allow your curiosity to follow you, allow things to change and grow, allow yourself to combine interests and passions in really different ways. If you're also an artist, bring your art to your science. If you're also a speaker, bring your speaker to your science. If you really care about some other issue in your world, think about how that's connected. And I think that bringing our full selves to our biology is the best way. To let it evolve in a really meaningful way.
Thank you so much for that great advice. Being involved in something helps you find new passions and what you're interested in, but also staying curious helps you look into new things that people might not have thought about before. So, Dr. Urban-Mead, we've covered a lot of ground today, and you are definitely on the go with lots of balls in the air. And I would like to thank you so much for being a guest here. We thank you so much. It was truly an honor speaking with you today. Thank you so much. I'm sure the audience appreciates spending time with you today.
Thanks, Katie. It was great to be here.
And also to our viewers, please join us again for another exciting episode and another remarkable STEM professional. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our network. You have been listening to Profiles in STEM. Katie Culbert signing off.